For years, Drew Scott kept his image spotless, the calm, collected half of Property Brothers. But behind that polished smile was a different story. Rivalries, betrayals, and grudges he never spoke of. And now, for the first time, Drew finally admits the truth. There are 7 people he hated the most, and some of the names will shock you.
Television made me a household name, but fame comes with shadows no one warns you about. Behind the sets and the dream homes, there were battles that nearly broke me. Now, after decades of silence, I'm ready to speak.
And trust me, number 5 is not what you think. Stay with me to the very end, because the name waiting there will change the way you see Drew forever. And when Drew finally decided to break his silence, the very first name on his list wasn't what fans expected. It wasn't a critic, it wasn't an executive, it was someone much closer to home, a rival who shared the same spotlight and the same stage. Number 1. Chip Gaines. To fans, Drew Scott and Chip Gaines seemed like brothers in spirit, 2 renovation powerhouses turning fixer-uppers into dream homes and dominating HGTV primetime lineup. On screen, there was no open hostility, no obvious feud. But behind closed doors, Drew saw Chip as something far more personal, a rival who overshadowed him, mocked him, and stole the spotlight he had worked years to claim. The trouble began when Fixer Upper exploded into a cultural phenomenon. Practically overnight, Chip and Joanna Gaines became the darlings of HGTV. Their brand wasn't just a television show, it was a lifestyle. Magazines, sponsorships, even home decor empires sprouted under their name. Drew, who had spent years alongside Jonathan carrying Property Brothers to the top, suddenly felt the ground shift beneath him. While he and his twin had built HGTV foundation brick by brick, the spotlight seemed to swing away from them and lock firmly on the Gaines empire. Insiders whispered that Drew was increasingly frustrated with network executives. Promos that once featured him and Jonathan were quietly redirected to Chip and Joanna. Crossovers that were originally pitched to the Scott brothers were canceled or reworked to fit the Gaines family. Even simple things, like media tours, became battlegrounds for attention. To Drew, it wasn't just business. It felt like betrayal, a reminder that loyalty meant nothing when the network found new favorites. But it wasn't only HGTV politics that fueled the grudge, it was Chip's personality. Known for his goofy charm and unscripted antics, Chip often made jokes at Drew's expense. In one interview, when asked about how Fixer Upper compared to Property Brothers, Chip smirked and said, "Well, our homes don't look like they came out of a catalog." The crowd laughed. But to Drew, it wasn't humor, it was a jab. A dismissal of his carefully crafted, polished style that he had worked tirelessly to perfect. The breaking point came at a high-profile HGTV event in New York. Both families were headliners, shaking hands with advertisers and smiling for the cameras. But backstage, things turned tense. After yet another joke from Chip about how Property Brothers felt like a used car sales pitch, Drew snapped. Witnesses recall him leaning in and warning Chip to cut it out. Chip laughed it off, claiming it was all in good fun, but Drew didn't smile. For one of the few times in his career, the polished, calm brother let his anger show. Later, Drew confided in friends that Chip's behavior wasn't about comedy at all. "He knows exactly what he's doing," Drew said. "It's not jokes, it's mockery. He wants to make me the punchline." That sense of being belittled stuck with him, carving Chip's name permanently into his mental blacklist. From that point on, Drew kept the rivalry hidden from fans. On camera, he remained professional, smiling alongside Chip during joint appearances and praising Fixer Upper when asked in interviews. But behind the smile, the wound never healed. To Drew, Chip Gaines wasn't just another HGTV star. He was the first reminder that in television, loyalty fades fast, and rivals can rise out of nowhere to take what you built. And that's why Chip Gaines became number 1 on the list of people Drew Scott could never forgive. Number 2. David Bromstad. If Chip Gaines represented the rival who mocked Drew from the outside, then David Bromstad was something different, the network's chosen favorite. To fans, David was vibrant, colorful, larger than life, and always smiling. But to Drew, he was the golden child of HGTV, the star who always seemed to get the red carpet treatment, while the Scott brothers were forced to fight for every scrap of attention. The tension began in the mid-2010s when HGTV expanded its roster of shows, and began heavily promoting David Bromstad as the face of the network. With his flamboyant personality and bold designs, David quickly became a fixture on everything from Color Splash to My Lottery Dream Home. And while Drew's Property Brothers franchise was pulling in massive ratings, he noticed something unsettling. Whenever the network gathered its stars, David was always front and center. Executives openly praised him, giving him keynote speaking slots at events, top billing on commercials, and glossy feature spreads in HGTV magazine. Drew, who had helped build the network's modern success alongside Jonathan, began to feel like an afterthought. In his eyes, the network had crowned its new golden boy and he wasn't wearing the crown. But it wasn't just the favoritism that stung, it was David himself. Behind the charm, Drew felt a sharp edge. At one dinner event in Los Angeles, Drew reportedly tried to strike up a conversation about future collaborations. David cut him off with a laugh, saying, "Your style is nice, but it's a little too safe. Mine's where the real art is." The words, while delivered casually, hit Drew hard. To him, it wasn't playful banter, it was condescension. Insiders later whispered that Drew grew tired of the constant comparisons. Fans on social media debated whose style was superior, with many praising David's bold, risk-taking creativity over Drew's refined, polished approach. To Drew, it felt like the more colorful David shined, the more his own work was dismissed as predictable. The breaking point came during a promotional shoot for HGTV, where the network wanted its biggest stars to film together. Crew members say the energy on set was tense. David cracked jokes about how Property Brothers was basically two guys flipping houses, while his own work was art on walls. Drew kept his smile for the cameras, but inside, he seethed. Privately, Drew admitted to his inner circle that David symbolized everything he resented about the industry, a reminder that talent alone wasn't enough. In television, flash often beat substance, and networks loved their chosen favorites. For Drew, David Bromstad wasn't just another star. He was proof that no matter how hard you worked, someone flashier could always steal the spotlight. And that's why David Bromstad secured his place as number 2 on Drew Scott's list of people he could never forgive. Number 3. Christina Haack. To millions of HGTV viewers, Christina Haack was the queen of chic design, the co-star of Flip or Flop, and later the face of Christina on the Coast. She had the charisma, the confidence, and the eye for turning outdated homes into luxury showcases. But to Drew Scott, Christina wasn't just another HGTV colleague. She was a designer who clashed with him so hard, it created a feud he never forgot. Their paths crossed during a special HGTV collaboration event, a glamorous all-star build where some of the network's top talents were invited to join forces on a single massive project. The idea sounded perfect, Drew and Christina, two powerhouse names, bringing their visions together for a one-of-a-kind design. But from the moment the plans were laid out, sparks flew. Christina leaned heavily into her signature California coastal style, whitewashed tones, bohemian textures, and bold statement pieces. Drew, ever the perfectionist, argued for a more polished, modern luxury look that would appeal to buyers. What should have been a creative collaboration quickly turned into a tug-of-war. Neither wanted to compromise, and the crew felt the tension in every meeting. Insiders revealed that Christina once dismissed one of Drew's suggestions with a sharp comment. "That's not design, that's staging." The words cut deep. To Drew, who had built his reputation on balancing form and function, it wasn't just criticism, it was an attack on his identity as a designer. The tension came to a head during the actual build. Christina allegedly refused to implement Drew's proposed layout adjustments, insisting they were too cold and soulless. When Drew tried to defend his vision, she fired back in front of the entire team, saying, "This isn't a catalog shoot, Drew. It's someone's home." The room fell silent. For Drew, who prided himself on professionalism, the humiliation of being undermined in front of peers left a lasting scar. The fallout didn't end with the project. When the special aired, fans and critics alike noted the clash of styles. Many praised Christina's bold choices, while some said Drew's contributions felt muted. To Drew, it was like salt on the wound. Not only had Christina shut him down behind the scenes, but the public reception made it seem as if she had won. Afterward, Drew reportedly told close friends he would never work with her again. He described Christina as talented, but toxic to collaborate with, someone who cared more about proving a point than finding common ground. And though he never spoke of it publicly, insiders say he quietly turned down multiple opportunities to appear alongside her in future HGTV specials. To the outside world, Drew and Christina were just two stars in the same HGTV universe. But behind the cameras, their feud marked one of the most personal clashes of his career. And that's why Christina Haack holds her place as number 3 on the list of Drew Scott. Number 4. Mike Holmes. If Drew Scott's feud with Christina Haack was about creative clashes, then his issues with Mike Holmes were about something much deeper: credibility. To fans, Mike Holmes was the ultimate straight-shooting contractor, the man behind Homes on Homes, whose slogan, "Make It Right," became a rallying cry for quality construction. He was respected, even idolized, for calling out shortcuts and exposing poor workmanship. But to Drew, Mike wasn't just a colleague. He was a critic who seemed determined to undermine the very foundation of what Drew had built. The tension began when Mike publicly criticized quick turnaround renovation shows, the exact type of programming that made Property Brothers a global hit. Without naming Drew directly, Mike often took subtle shots in interviews, saying things like, "Renovations aren't about quick flips and pretty staging. They're about safety, quality, and doing the job right." To the audience, it sounded like general advice. To Drew, it was a thinly veiled insult. Insiders recall a particularly awkward HGTV panel event where both Mike and Drew were seated side by side, answering questions about the future of home renovation shows. When asked about design versus construction balance, Mike leaned into his mic and said, "Design is important, but if you're just covering up problems with fancy finishes, you're not helping homeowners, you're setting them up for disaster." The crowd chuckled, but Drew sat stone-faced. Everyone in the room knew who that comment was aimed at. Things got worse when the two were scheduled for a crossover segment. Producers hoped to capitalize on their star power by pairing Mike's reputation with Drew's design finesse. But the collaboration fizzled almost immediately. During one walkthrough, Drew suggested using cost-effective materials to keep the project on budget. Mike shot back in front of the crew, "Cheap now means expensive later. That's not how I work." Drew's smile never dropped for the cameras, but those who were there said his jaw tightened, his patience stretched to the breaking point. Behind the scenes, Drew grew tired of being cast as the television personality, while Mike was portrayed as the real deal. He felt the narrative was unfair after all. Drew wasn't just a host in a suit. He had years of real estate and design expertise, and his brother Jonathan was a licensed contractor. To Drew, Mike's attitude dismissed everything he and Jonathan had achieved, painting them as entertainers rather than professionals. Privately, Drew confided in close friends that Mike Holmes represented a bigger problem in his career: the perception that the Scott brothers were all flash and no substance. "It's like he wants to be the hero by making us look like the villains," Drew once said. And in Drew's eyes, that wasn't competition, it was sabotage. Though he kept quiet in public, refusing to fuel the feud, Drew quietly distanced himself from Mike Holmes. Invitations for joint appearances were declined, and collaborations were shut down before they could even begin. To fans, nothing seemed amiss. But to Drew, Mike Holmes had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And that's why Mike Holmes will always remain number 4 on Drew Scott's list. Number 5. Jonathan Scott. This is the one no fan ever expected. For years, Drew and Jonathan Scott have been presented as the perfect package twins, who seem to share not only blood, but vision, ambition, and success. On screen, they were inseparable, the realtor in the suit and the contractor with the hammer, turning dreams into reality. But the truth? Behind the smiles and sharp suits, Drew carried a grudge against his own twin brother, a grudge so deep, it nearly tore apart the empire they built together. The seeds of tension were planted long before Property Brothers ever aired. Growing up in Vancouver, the twins were close, but there was always competition. Jonathan, with his natural charisma and larger-than-life personality, often stole the spotlight. He was the funny one, the entertainer, the one people noticed first. Drew, quieter and more strategic, played the role of organizer, planner, and sometimes the overlooked twin. Family friends later admitted that even as kids, Drew sometimes seemed frustrated by how easily Jonathan commanded attention. That sibling rivalry carried into adulthood, While Jonathan pursued construction and magic, Drew chased business and real estate. They were different, yet always tied together, and those differences never really disappeared. When Property Brothers first launched in 2011, it was Jonathan's hands-on renovations that caught people's eyes. Viewers loved seeing him tear down walls, swing hammers, and rescue failing houses. Drew, meanwhile, was often cast in the background role, the suit who handled numbers, negotiated deals, and talked too much. Fans on social media often praised Jonathan's charisma, while joking that Drew was the boring twin. To outsiders, it was harmless chatter. To Drew, it stung, because behind the cameras, he wasn't just a salesman. Drew was the strategist, the planner, the one who turned their brand into an empire. He negotiated the contracts, pitched new spin-offs, and handled the business side of their success. Yet in the public eye, Jonathan often received the glory. The differences in personality eventually exploded into professional clashes. Jonathan wanted creative freedom, bold renovations, quirky designs, risks that would make headlines. Drew pushed for efficiency, clean lines, and designs that appealed to buyers. On camera, this looked like playful banter. Off camera, it often turned into screaming matches. Crew members whispered about one infamous fight during season 4. A massive project ran weeks behind schedule and thousands over budget. Jonathan blamed Drew for promising the clients too much. Drew shot back that Jonathan's obsession with custom features was sabotaging deadlines. The argument grew so intense that Drew reportedly stormed out of a production meeting, slamming the door behind him. For days, the brothers barely spoke, and the crew worked in tense silence, unsure if the show would even continue. What hurt Drew the most wasn't the fights, it was the feeling of being overshadowed. Jonathan's rugged persona and hammer-in-hand image made him the fan favorite. He was the builder, the hero who made dreams come true. Drew was the talker in the suit. Privately, Drew confessed to friends that he sometimes felt like a sidekick in his own franchise. "People forget I built this too," he once said. That resentment boiled over during a press junket when Jonathan half-jokingly quipped, "Drew just talks, I actually build." The line was meant to get a laugh. The reporters chuckled. Jonathan smirked, but Drew didn't laugh. For him, those words summed up years of being diminished. He never forgot them. The industry only fueled the tension. Tabloids occasionally speculated about whether the brothers would go their separate ways. Executives noticed the rivalry too, quietly meeting with each brother about potential solo projects. For Drew, it was a bitter reminder. Even the network knew that one day, the Scott empire could fracture, and Jonathan might be seen as the indispensable one. In private, Drew carried the weight of this rivalry heavily. He respected Jonathan, loved him as a brother, but could never quite shake the feeling of competition. Friends say Drew would vent about feeling like the businessman in the shadows while Jonathan soaked up the limelight. At one point, Drew even confided that if they weren't brothers, he might have cut ties years earlier. Despite the tension, Drew never let it show publicly. In interviews, he always praised Jonathan. On social media, he played the role of the loyal twin. But behind that loyalty was a silence filled with resentment, bruised pride, and years of feeling second best. And that's why Jonathan Scott, his twin, his partner, his other half, takes the most shocking place on Drew's list. Because this wasn't just business rivalry or network politics, it was family. And sometimes, the deepest scars aren't left by enemies at all, but by the people closest to you. For Drew, Jonathan was not just a brother. He was a mirror, a reminder of everything Drew wanted to be, everything he resented, and everything he could never escape. Number 6. The critics and the media. If rival stars and even his own brother left scars, then it was the critics who twisted the knife. For Drew Scott, the media wasn't just background noise, it was a storm he could never outrun. And one scandal in particular left him feeling humiliated, exposed, and betrayed in ways fans never saw. It all began when one of the biggest lifestyle magazines in America decided to run a cover story during the peak of Property Brothers' success. The headline was short, sharp, and cruel. "The Boring Brother?" In bold print, Drew's smiling face sat next to his twin Jonathan's, but the article inside made it clear who they believed was the star. Jonathan was described as the charismatic builder, the fan favorite, the one who made Property Brothers a hit. Drew, by contrast, was labeled as the sidekick, the business twin, even the background noise of the franchise. The article didn't stop there. It cited anonymous production sources who claimed Drew was jealous of Jonathan's popularity and desperate to stand out. The piece suggested he was lobbying HGTV for solo opportunities, and it ended with a brutal line: "Without Jonathan, Drew Scott would just be another realtor in a suit." The fallout was immediate. Fans on social media picked up the headline, turning it into a meme. Twitter threads joked about the boring twin, and late-night hosts even referenced the article in passing. For a man who prided himself on professionalism, composure, and years of hard work, Drew was suddenly reduced to a punchline. But the controversy didn't end there. A week later, a tabloid ran an even harsher story, claiming Drew had stormed off set during a renovation shoot, demanding more screen time. The piece painted him as egotistical, insecure, and hard to work, with a stark contrast to the calm, steady image he had cultivated for years. Insiders later said the story was exaggerated, if not entirely fabricated, but by then the damage was done. Online debates erupted. Was Drew really the diva of Property Brothers? Was Jonathan the real reason for their success? Behind the scenes, Drew was devastated. He had spent years building a career on trust with fans, with clients, with his own network. To see it reduced to gossip, headlines, and cruel jokes left him shaken. Privately, he admitted to close friends that he felt betrayed by the very media we gave everything to. Every interview, every photo shoot, every behind-the-scenes special, all the access he had given to the press, was now being turned against him. Worse still, industry insiders began whispering. The scandal gave HGTV executives and advertisers reason to question his public appeal. Would Drew still sell magazines? Would audiences still tune in if the perception grew that he wasn't the favorite twin? For Drew, that uncertainty cut deep. It wasn't just about image anymore. It was about his career, his legacy, and the empire he and Jonathan had fought to build. Though the storm eventually faded, as scandals always do, the scar remained. Drew never forgot the humiliation of being labeled the boring brother, the sting of seeing his reputation twisted for clicks, or the pain of realizing the media could destroy in days what took years to build. Number 7. The HGTV executives. For years, Drew Scott was the polished face of HGTV, the man who helped shape the network's identity alongside his brother Jonathan. But while viewers saw him closing deals and unveiling dream homes, behind the curtain, Drew was fighting a different kind of battle, one against the very executives who pulled the strings. To Drew, HGTV executives weren't just bosses. They were puppet masters who controlled every storyline, every edit, every narrative fans consumed. And over time, those battles for control nearly broke him. It started small. Producers would tweak storylines to make renovations seem more dramatic than they really were. Clients who were already happy with their homes were asked to fake frustration for the cameras. Even schedules were manipulated to create tension where none existed. Drew played along at first. After all, television was entertainment. But as the years went on, the pressure mounted. He began to feel that Property Brothers wasn't his show anymore. It was theirs. The worst moments came in the boardroom. Drew would bring fresh ideas, new formats, innovative designs, even spin-off concepts. Time and time again, they were shot down. Executives insisted on formulas they claimed worked for ratings. One insider recalled a heated meeting where Drew pushed back against adding scripted drama into the episodes. An executive allegedly snapped, "You're not here to reinvent the wheel, you're here to play your role." That line stuck with Drew like a scar. But it wasn't just about creative control. Money became another battlefield. Despite Property Brothers becoming one of HGTV's flagship franchises, Drew often felt the network undervalued his contributions. Sponsorship deals were rerouted, pay structures were capped, and promotional campaigns spotlighted newer stars instead of honoring the Scott brothers' legacy. To Drew, it felt like betrayal, as if the very empire he helped build was turning its back on him. The breaking point came when executives reportedly demanded the brothers manufacture a fake on-camera argument for a season finale to boost drama. Drew refused. Calm, collected Drew, the man who usually smiled through everything, stood his ground and told them no. Insiders say it was one of the only times they saw him genuinely furious. The The tension escalated so much that Drew allegedly considered walking away from HGTV entirely. Though he stayed and continued to deliver hits, the bitterness never faded. To fans, HGTV executives were invisible. To Drew, they were the hidden villains of his story, the ones who constantly pulled him back whenever he tried to step forward. And that's why the HGTV executives earned their place as number 5 on the list of people Drew Scott could never forgive. And that's the 7 people Drew Scott could never forgive. Which one shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts below, hit like if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe. More untold stories are coming your way.